you'd seen of the game was the reveal trailer and the subsequent backlash, then you'd be forgiven for thinking that Battlefield 5 is all about female Cockney redhead commandos showing just how much German soldiers don't like it up 'em. Having had the opportunity to dig into the character progression and customization at the game's review event, as well as speak to DICE to clear up some of the more niggling questions surrounding the game, that's not quite the case. So, as a disclaimer at this point, what you're seeing in the background is footage captured on PC at a DICE Run event in Stockholm earlier this week. EA paid for travel and accommodation, but it gave us 2 days with the various maps and modes ahead of launch, even into the Play First trial, which goes live tomorrow on the 9th of November. So first and foremost, though many of these customization options that we did see in those first trailers are very much still there in the game, it feels like the most sensationalized examples have been toned down. More importantly, they don't really come to affect the millisecond to millisecond gameplay. DICE have removed the ability to spot and mark enemy soldiers directly and track them across the map, replacing it instead with a more general and stationary ping. And so because of this, they've had to do more to make soldiers stand out and contrast with the surroundings, giving them a slight specular highlight to a shadowy outline. From a distance then, it really doesn't matter if someone's wearing a fancy trench coat or not, whether they've got goggles on or if they're wearing a hat or anything. Even up close, it really doesn't matter that much. And the thing that I notice the most is the presence of female voices as orders are called out and you ping enemy locations and stuff like that. It's the auditory side of things that is much more noticeable than the visual. Still, for people who want soldiers to have strict and regimented uniforms, Battlefield 5's customization options are broad and often border on the ridiculous. The God Save the King trenchcoat is in there. There's gas masks that are commonly associated with the 1980s or 1970s instead of the 1940s. You've got really odd combinations of goggles, helmets and scarves, and paratrooper gear can be mixed with regular ground-pounding infantry. Look, it is just an unholy mishmash of things, but I won't deny that I did quite enjoy playing around with dressing up my various soldiers and also slapping gold liveries all over my guns. Heading into the Tides of War, there's a few elements that have had players a bit nervous with DICE's intent and how these services can often lean too heavily towards pushing microtransactions and making people grind excessively. We got to speak to DICE's Ryan MacArthur for clarification on a few of the more awkward and picky points of this, and you can catch our interview over on the6axis.com. But for this video, let's give you a quick rundown. So you might have seen that some weapons will actually be unlockable rewards as part of the Tides of War, but what wasn't clear at the time was whether these would be exclusive to a particular chapter and if you'd then be able to unlock them if you don't complete particular challenges. Thankfully, no, that will not be the case. Yes, guns will be handed out as rewards for weekly events and things, not as part of the main chapter progression, but Ryan then explained to us that you would then be able to unlock these in a different way quite soon afterwards. Actual gameplay elements will not be gated. Cosmetic items, however, might be a bit more exclusive, tied to the war-long narrative that DICE are planning to tell across the multiple chapters. If they repeat a particular event some way down the line, then those cosmetics might return, but Ryan said, and I quote, "What we'd like to do for now is treat them as though they're exclusive forever." That's probably the best way of looking at it. We don't want to promise that they'll come back, but the plan is to see what people want. So in other words, maybe, maybe not. We'll have to wait and see, and if enough people demand to see a particular skin come back, then they'll run the event again, or they might just open things up a bit more. Okay, next topic, and progression is confirmed to be based on earning XP for your actions and completing missions, as opposed to just spending time playing the game. Additionally, since Black Ops 4 messed it up, I asked about how it's weighted to progressing through the different tiers and unlockables within a chapter. Ryan said to us that they aim for it to be able so that you can, and I quote, "be able to finish the weekly event while also giving a normal player time to do other stuff as well." So then you basically just need to hop in and complete the weekly event quite quickly, and then you can go and do whatever the hell you want. For chapter progression though, doing weekly events will be the quickest because they give you a boost or a buff to your XP. But even without them, you should be able to make it through to the end, he explained to us. The first Overture chapter is important because it's only about a month in length, whereas following chapters will be 2, maybe 3 months in length, and it will be used to try and balance the successive chapters in terms of how long it actually takes. Finally, we talked about just the sheer weight of content that will be in Tides of War. The way that MacArthur explained it to us was that they're shifting away from the en masse map drops and towards experiences that are then supported by maps and other content. So we see the Panzerstorm map coming in the first chapter of the Tides of War, which is themed around tank battles. The map is huge yet again, and it's got the most number of active vehicle slots per side, and so that really ties in with the narrative at that particular time. But it's just the one map. Alongside that, MacArthur said, and again I quote, "Versus how we've done things in the past, it's that we can take a bunch of the stuff that we've already made and accentuate that as well." So to put it another way, 1 year from now, we won't have seen the equivalent of 3 to 4 major expansion packs with 4 maps apiece, but rather half a dozen seasonal events that have themes, weekly activities, and that reuse and revisit existing maps in new ways. In a pure numbers game, it won't stack up. There's no chance of that happening, and that's going to be very disappointing for some of you, but as a live service, this does actually make much more sense. Even with DICE's assurances, a lot of this is still going to be in the wait-and-see territory. Tides of War launches a few weeks after the game's 20th of November release date, while it's also heading into Play First trial on Xbox One and PC tomorrow, the 9th of November. Our scored review will be live prior to Tides of War, probably around the start of next week, and it's going to be based around what is in the game at launch. And honestly, it's a damn good Battlefield game. But in the meantime, we've got our Road to Review impressions from this event in Stockholm live on the 6th Axis. Thanks as ever for checking this video out, and I hope that it's answered most, if not all, of your questions surrounding Tides of War and progression in the game. Feel free to ask more in the comments below, and we'll answer what we can as soon as we see them. As always though, please do like, subscribe and share, and hopefully we will see you again soon. Goodbye!